Are you ready for some word tonight? All right. I'm very, as always, it's not unusual for me to be excited about the word. I'm always very excited to open the word, to shine the spotlight on the text, to look for Jesus, and as you know, to try and wrestle something out, to try and take something away that we go home with. That's more than just a couple of points and a principle, but really an encounter. We're all on some form of spiritual journey, especially in this room. And for those watching or listening in the future, you're on a spiritual journey. It's part of the reason you click play on a sermon and you follow along, or it's part of the reason you're sitting here tonight, because you are on some sort of spiritual journey. Part of that journey is a formation, an individual spiritual formation. You are being crafted by the hand of God spiritually. And this is the thing that I don't know that we talk about enough. You're participating, whether you know it or not. You're participating when you pray. You're participating when you read. You're participating when you listen. And I'm talking about not just listening to sermons, but when you listen to the Spirit, when you respond to the Spirit, you're participating in your own spiritual formation. You're helping craft that vessel. If Jeremiah's illustration of a potter with clay helps, and it has helped a lot of us because it's something that's very visual and something that is prone to need a professional. Not just anyone can step up and decide they're going to make a pot out of the clay. You got to know what you're doing. And so here's that illustration of the potter fashioning us on the wheel. And then, of course, there's the breakage, the crash. And rather than just throwing it out and starting over, he knows how to bring quality out of a disaster. What would look like a disaster to a less skilled artisan? Well, the Father's an artisan, and he knows what he's doing. Paul one time said that you are his masterpiece. That's a pretty big word. It means that God is pretty excited about what he's doing in you. He's pretty excited about what he's forming in you. But you're participating in that you're pliable, in that you listen, in that you wrestle, in that you take these things to heart, and then you apply them to your life. That's part of the journey. How do we marry that concept with it is finished? I mean, Jesus did the work on my behalf, right? I mean, Jesus hangs on the cross and says, it is finished. He literally uses a Greek word that means there's nothing left to do. And yet, here's God doing stuff. He's doing stuff in your life, in my life. So we know that Christ finished the work in a very spiritual sense, as far as he doesn't have to do anything else to forgive us of our sins. He doesn't have to do anything else to make us righteous. God's not, sort of twirling his thumbs in heaven going, what's next? What are we going to do with this COVID? What are we going to do with the economy? What are we going to, God's not, he's not freaked out, and he's certainly not still working on stuff to affect our redemption. And yet, here's God working. And we know those two things are compatible. Finish the work, and yet all of us go, God's working, right? Someone says, I don't know if God's doing anything, and we go, God's working. God's working. Finish the work. So how did he finish the work? And he's still working. And so I want to work on that a little bit tonight, because I'm not trying to make it deep. I'm not trying to make it lofty or over our heads. I think it's maybe quite simple. Part of it is that I think part of it is something we already deeply inherently know. God did the work that needs done, but God is working in me so I can get to that end point that God knows he has designed for me. He is a potter that has already imagined what the pot should look like. He knows it. It's like that famous story of Michelangelo, who saw his massive piece of granite and he hit his hammer against the side of it. It was a piece of granite that probably would have taken up half this room. And he just kept hitting the side of that granite. Someone asked the master what he was doing, and he said, well, I'm beginning the steps of releasing Moses. He said, he's in there. I've just got to let him out. And so he could see him, and he knew that all he really had to do was strip away what wasn't Moses. That was how he described it to his assistant. He said, all I do is strip away what isn't Moses until I find him. And sometimes I imagine that that's God with us going, finish the work. I see you in there. I'm just stripping away what isn't the finished product. I'm going to get to the finished product. I'm a master craftsman. That's God to us. I'm a master craftsman. I'm going to get to the finished product. I'd love for you to come along on the journey. I'd love for you to enjoy this journey and revel in it a little bit.